I'm sure many of you heard that because of EA's wonderful business practices, the government is starting to get involved in video games again. Now, whether I personally feel that the loot box system that's being used right now actually is gambling is irrelevant, because the only opinion that matters with is government entities. And we've seen in several nations that they think it is gambling, and we've already seen in at least one U.S. state that they think it's gambling, which I'm sure will bring in more. I'm starting to have flashbacks to '92 and those hearings over video games, which is what led me to this point, that the ESRB has failed. I knew it was a matter of time, I just didn't know how long, and to their credit, 25 years is a pretty good run before they fucked up on this level. The purpose of the ESRB is to prevent government intervention and regulation. That's why they exist. Now the government is getting involved again because they were asleep at the wheel. So they fucked up. They no longer serve any purpose. It's been heading this way for a few years now, though, that their relevancy has been decreasing. Over the past at least decade, their consistency and their effectiveness have been called into question numerous times. The biggest examples I can think of heavily revolve around their AO rating, which is a rating that serves no purpose at all. If a game has an AO rating, it is unsellable in any store. None will carry it. So why that exists, I don't know. But there have been 2 games that have gotten that are relatively high profile for why they got it. There was Manhunt 2 several years ago, made by Rockstar, that received that rating. Why they got it, it was explained as extreme violence or something of that nature. So they had to go back for a couple months, take out a couple things. I don't even think they disclosed what exactly they took out. Probably spent a few $1,000,000 doing that because it was a couple months. And then they got an M rating. What they changed, we don't know. For all we know, they didn't change barely anything. And therein lies the problem, because the ESRB is not on a standard per se. It's individuals. It's gut feeling largely. And that's been one of their biggest complaints, or one of the biggest complaints against them, that they are very inconsistent with this. What could be seen as an AO rating on one game is an M rating on another, or hell, even a T rating at times. There's no consistency at all, and this has been pointed out numerous times. The biggest example in recent years that I can think of is Hatred. Now, Hatred was a twin-stick shooter where you were in control of the most emo man that ever lived. Edgelord Supreme, I like to call him. And that game got an AO rating. Grand Theft Auto 5 has an M rating. But context, I can hear you say. Yes, context. One game, you are controlling a spree killer in a twin-stick shooter form, and another game, you are controlling a spree killer in fully rendered 3D form. Oh, but GTA 5, it doesn't make you be a spree killer. You have to choose to do that. Really, Grand Theft Auto, the game that has always been marketed as the game where you can do anything, where you can destroy anything, where you can kill anyone you want. That game, you have to choose to be a spree killer, and that's not taken into consideration in the ratings, really. Okay, sure. So how one game got an AO rating and the other an M, other than, is beyond me. But now the ESRB has fucked up in a way that, well, the whole purpose behind their existence. They have basically made it so that the government is coming in again. So at this point, I question why even have the ESRB anymore. And I do mean that seriously. As weird as that may sound, not to have a ratings board. It's all voluntary, and you don't even have to have your game have a rating to be on shelves, so to speak. The digital marketplace, you absolutely do not need a rating. Stores, they've made it sort of a standard that you do need a rating to get on store shelves, but in digital marketplaces like Steam, GOG, Humble, whatever, you don't even need a rating. There are so many games on Steam that don't have a rating. It's hilarious, and they do just fine. The only reason you need a rating is because the stores pretty much have all said, yeah, we kind of like that you have a rating if you want to be on our shelves. And with the drop of physical media and how quickly everything's being replaced with pure digital, I don't like that, but that's the reality. I find that the ESRB has largely become irrelevant in that area too. So they've been declawed, and then they've allowed the government to come in again with this whole gambling shit. And there will be regulations placed. So at this point, I'm asking, what purpose do they serve? Maybe they can revamp themselves. Maybe they can do something to become relevant again. But as it stands, they are quickly going the way of the Comics Code Authority, especially because of how random, how inconsistent, and how moralistic they seem with their ratings. And that is, to me, the biggest comparison I can make between the current state of the ESRB and the Comics Code Authority, is that it largely seems to be, well, I feel, or does this hold up to my morals, with a good chunk of their ratings. That's not what you were intended for. You've gone well outside of your scope, and it's at that point you're no longer needed. But yeah, throw out some ideas for how the ESRB could be made to revamp themselves to become what they were supposed to be again. Because at this point, I will be shocked if they're around that much longer. There's been Math Machine just throwing out an idea of what I think is going to happen, and just how weird it's been watching the situation devolve for the last, honestly, decade, but particularly few years. Peace out.